Hi, this is Mike. This is kind of a long overdue video, but with all the folks that are raising Mearns quail this year, kind of been bombarded with questions about the pens, the feed, all that good stuff. So I thought I'd do a video on pretty much everything that I feel like I know about raising Mearns quail. I've been doing it about 5 years now. And these are just all the things that I think that are kind of important and a lot of the questions that I get asked. And so I just thought I'd do a quick little video on it. But the number one question I get probably is the pen size. How big does the pen have to be? And I would say that you need at least a 4x4 minimum. I mean, absolute minimum. Now this pen here that they're standing is a 4x8, but it does go through those holes right there to the other side, which makes it an 8x8. So this is kind of overkill. You don't quite have to be this big, but I have a few of my really good breeders in here. I call this kind of the condos in here, but I only have a few of them in here, and everything else is outside. And I'll do a video on that, on what those pens look like. I think the roof should be padded myself because they will jump up and bust their heads. On my pens outside, I have kind of a roof that kind of gives, and so that's what I use for out there. But inside here, I've just got the foam all up through there, and that's my feeder I use there. Just a regular old chick feeder, and that's actually just an empty mayonnaise bottle, and it has holes in the top of it I drilled for when I pour their feed in there. And I have a bunch of different feeders, and I use a bunch of different feeders. The water bottle, just simple old, every day. You can get them at any feed store, usually one per pen. This one I just happen to have 2 on it, but one's plenty, and you can go 2 or 3 days, and then once a week I pull them out and clean them all. The bedding, you can do pine shavings, you can do sand, I've done hay. I think I've done a little bit of everything. I don't really see a huge benefits from one to the other. I have some on wire, and you know, a lot of times when folks do that, they forget that they do have to have a place they can get off of that wire. And I usually tell people at least a third of the pen, if you have a wire pen, wire floor, to let them stand to get off of that wire. And a lot of this stuff I'll probably repeat myself on a lot of it, but I'll try not to. But the birds start laying about mid-May. And every year, you know, you may get some early, you may get some late, but typically they start laying about mid-May, and they'll lay anywhere from 12 to 18 weeks, just give or take what kind of season you're having. And from each pair, you'll typically get about 40 to 50 eggs from each pair. And I say that because I just kind of take a total of all the eggs I get. You know, some birds will lay 65 eggs, some will lay 30, but just as an average, give or take 40 to 50 eggs. And it's all going to kind of vary to where you live. And kind of touching on the pen, just to backtrack a little bit, I always tell everybody the most important thing is to have the birds not stressed. No matter what kind of pen you build, if the birds are not stressed in the pen is typically okay. And you'll tell when a bird's stressed. They'll just never stop pacing. They'll never get comfortable. Egg production will be cruddy. Cats, dogs, if they've got access to jumping up at them. You know, all my pens are at least about 3 feet off the ground. You don't want, you know, critters to be able to mess with them. So that helps prevent, you know, the stress, them being up off the ground. Heat, they can take just about any heat. But if it gets extremely hot, I'll cool the pens down with a little water, with a little overhead water. This whole room actually has it up on the roof. I typically don't have to use it in here because my ceiling there is about 6 inches of insulation. So it can be 105 outside, and it doesn't come through and heat that roof up. When it's 100 degrees outside and you put a temperature gauge up on that tin, it's about 135 degrees, burning hot. But it doesn't really transfer into these pens. People ask about buying eggs or buying birds. I tell people, if you buy eggs, and we sell eggs, they're $20 a piece, $50 for shipping, minimum for 10, you know, at least 10 eggs. The chances of getting birds off of eggs are very, very slim. Those eggs really don't ship well. They're very thin, they're very fragile. Your best bet is to buy a pair of birds. If you're buying birds, you know, you really just don't want one pair, because then when your birds lay eggs, I mean, you just pretty much have to breed brother and sister back together. So your best bet is to buy, you know, 3 pair. Usually people will give you an extra male, because usually there's a lot of extra males. I mean, they may not have the extra males to give, but if they have them, they'll typically give them to you, because males really aren't worth too much. But that way, and you know, whenever you buy your birds, you know, ask them, try to get some different bloodlines, so you don't want them all the same. I have 3 different bloodlines here, and you know, whenever you send out birds, you try to give everybody a little bit of something different. And then they're typically marked with the bands, you know, orange, green, purple is usually what we use, or orange, green, blue. And then they each mean a little something where the birds came from. So in buying the birds, there's also a little bit of a risk buying birds. Shipping birds through the mail, and sometimes they may take a long time. I do everything express, so you're trying to get them to people just as absolutely as fast as you can. But sometimes it takes a long time to get the birds. They can get stressed from that. And I think the #1 problem with shipping birds is folks not having everything prepared for when they get the birds. You want a nice pen completely set up. You want feed in it, the same feed that they were eating from the breeder. You want the same kind of waterer. And when I order birds, and I'm constantly trying to upgrade my bloodlines, what I do is when I get my birds in, I will quarter this pen off to where it's only a 4x4 small pen, like this little area right here. And that's where I'll put new birds that I get shipped in. I don't give them a great big pen, because a lot of times they'll just run to the farthest corner and hide, because they're nervous about being shipped. And you know, they may not drink good, they may not eat good. If you have a different kind of waterer that they're not accustomed to, you know, they're already going to be dehydrated coming through the mail. So, you know, you want to get them on water as fast as you can. And a lot of times, if I don't know exactly what kind of waterer the folks were using where I'm getting the birds, I'll put a chick waterer in, a bowl of water, one of these regular waterers. I'll put all kinds of water, because that's the main thing, is get them to drink as soon as they come in. So shipping birds, eggs, you know, I hate to sound kind of negative on all of it, but they are kind of tough to get going. But once you get them going, then they're pretty easy. You know, once you have a nice little flock, and they're not much different than any other bird. They're very fragile, so the hatching rate, fertility rate, it's not going to be as strong as like a bobwhite or a valley or something like that. It's going to be a little less. The chicks are real fragile. But, once you have 10, 20 eggs coming in a week, it's pretty easy to start, really hatching a lot of birds for yourself and build you up a nice little flock. Let's see. What else? For the folks that live up north, people will ask me, well, how cold can they take it? And they can take it really cold. I mean, really cold. I have Scott O'Brien in Maine. He has them and sells them up there. Jack out in Kansas. Excuse me. He has them out there. Both of those guys go well below freezing. And they just wrap their pen in visqueen plastic just to keep them out of the wind. And you got to keep them dry and keep them out of the wind. But they can handle the cold, no problem. And let's see. Heat, as far as heat goes, I mean, these birds come from Arizona, Mexico. I mean, they're coming from all over super, super hot places. So that don't typically bother them too much. This is just another pair in here. And so the heat's good, the cold's good. They're pretty tough on all of that. Hatching out the eggs, if you do get eggs. And you'll notice I've written all this stuff out. You can find it online somewhere. And if you find an old copy, chances are it's going to be a little different than what I'm saying now, because I kind of update and change this thing all the time. I used to hatch around 45–50% humidity. And now I don't do that. I'm down to 30–35% humidity when I hatch. And most of the time there's not even no water in the incubator. And now when they're a couple days before they pop out, I wait till they pip. And then when they pip, I put them in a hatcher. And once they go in a hatcher, I crank it all the way up, 60–65%. And I drop the temperature about a degree. Usually I'm incubating on about 99.8, and when I put them in the hatcher after they've pipped the shell, and I put them in there, it's full of water, and I'll drop it down to about 99 on the temperature. And my personal opinion on that is I'm just trying to say, okay, it's time for you to get out. It's a little something different. You know, it feels a little funky to them. So they're like, okay, it's time to get out of here. And that's just my opinion. Works pretty well for me. You'll have to kind of figure out your own perfect humidity, all your own stuff, because it'll change. Mine changes all the time, and sometimes it changes in the season. If something seems to be a little funky, I'm not scared to change it, to try something different. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try something else. Once they pop out, once you got them all hatched, well, and I guess I should say, your eggs. I don't hold an egg over 3 or 4 days, and I like to pop it in the, well, not in the hatcher, to put in the incubator. I will hold, I don't care if it's 2 weeks old, I'm still going to put it in there. It seems like after about 7 days, they start to kind of lose their fertility. And so you kind of want to, do it as quick as you can. I mean, I collect the eggs every day, twice a day. And all you're trying to do by collecting those eggs so much is you don't want them to get pecked. If that egg's in there and that's something new to them and they're not used to it, they're going to want to peck it. And a lot of times I'll just leave eggs in. First couple eggs, I'm not too worried about them because it's all real spotty when they start. So I'll just leave those eggs in there. I'll put a little X on them and then they kind of get used to them. And that way they're not cracking eggs so much. If you raise them on wire, you're going to get a lot of pecked eggs. That's all there is to it. And I raise them mostly on wire outside. I mean, I got big boxes in the back that they typically lay in, but when they lay out on the wire, a lot of times they get pecked. Not all the time. I mean, you're trying to, that's why you're out there trying to get eggs as much as you can. You don't want them to get dirty. They're very thin shelled compared to like a bob white or something like that. And a lot of times I'll throw bob white eggs in here with them too, because they have a hard time breaking that. And they'll, you know, kick it around and they get bored with it and then they quit breaking eggs. So that's just a little trick that I do with them. Trying to think of some of the other questions. Brooding. In the brooder room, I've done a lot of videos on that. You can just look up brooder room and I walk y'all through that. And I kind of change how I feel about that a lot of times too. I used to never put no more than 10 chicks in a little brooder. It's like 24 by 30. Now I'll put a little more in there, 15 or 20. I have put 30 in there, mostly just because I just didn't have any room. I like to put, when they're first hatch out, I like to cover the whole thing with paper towels. It's on 1/2-inch wire, PVC coated. And then on top of that paper towel, I'll throw either hay or a few pine shavings, not much. And if I do use pine shavings, I make sure to get all of the little stuff out. Excuse me. Water, I never put cold water in the brooder. I always let it warm up with the lights. I always turn the brooder on the day before so the temperature's all good. And then after about a week, I pull half of the paper towels out so they kind of start to get used to the wire. If they struggle at all or anything, I'll put it back in. You mostly just want to keep an eye on them. I grind up their food the first week. I use Purina Game Bird, the 30%, and then after the first week, I kind of look at the food because, you know, some of your crumble will be big, some of it will be real small, and then I just kind of judge it on that. So pretty much, I think that's about it on brooding. Every week you want to drop it, you know, drop your temperature about 5 degrees until they're, you know, old enough they can go outside. 4 weeks, they're ready to go outside. My brooder room stays 85 degrees. I have a small window unit in there. And with that 85 degrees, inside of that brooder with two 25-watt red bulbs, about 6 inches off the ground, is like right at 98, 99 degrees, right under, directly under the light. So they can go to the other end of the pen to get cool. And I always, when they start out, I lay a little top on top of the brooder to kind of push the heat down. And then after that first week, I'll just take that off. And then I have 11-watt bulbs, 7-watt bulbs, and then I just keep the heat according to that. It's pretty simple. I've done a lot of videos on that too. So if you got any questions about that, there's plenty of videos on that. I like using GQF vitamins in the water to get them started. I just think it's a good boost for them. You have to change that every day though, because it'll get nasty, it'll get slimy because of those vitamins. Let me see here. I actually wrote some of my notes. And this is what I send out when people ask, but I did want to do a video on it. Bantam chicks for raising these guys are awesome. There's nothing better than an old English game hen. She's crazy broody, takes good care of the chicks. your percentage will go through the roof on hatching them out and raising them and them being real calm and all that good stuff. So that's a good way to go. And all you really have to do is when your chickens, your old English game bantams, when they're sitting on their own eggs and they're all nice and broody, and I like to take my eggs and stick them in the incubator, check them in about 5 days, make sure, you know, they're all fertile. And then I just go out in the evening, reach under the bantam, pull her eggs out and put their eggs in. And set your watch and it's all good from there. A little tricky at first to kind of get used to making the swap, but it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy. I've already talked about the pine shavings and the wire and all that good stuff, but I get asked that a lot of times. I don't think there's nothing wrong with wire, but don't use this wire. This is like the old cheap thin wire that you use on the outside of pins. I think it just cuts their feet. It's just really sharp, and it's always got little kind of where the galvanized is kind of gooped up on it, and it's sharp, and I've never had good luck with that. It bounces all around. The birds are trying to walk, and the wire's jumping up and down. It's just not made for that. Use either a hot dipped heavy gauge, you know, 1/2 inch by 1 or 1/2 inch by 1/2. But if you get the hot dipped, then it's usually thicker. I think like a 16 gauge is roughly what you want. But that's a huge, I get asked that like a lot. and you can do it either way, but pine shavings is nice. You know, a little more work to keep them clean, but it's nice. And if you have pine shavings in your pens outside, you have to protect it a lot more from the rain, because you don't want your pine shavings all soaking wet, you know, because then they're just going to be really nasty. So you have to keep them dry. Easy in here because this is all a covered roof. As far as the birds being tame, you can tell these are pretty tame birds. They'll eat out of your hand. That's as tame as I like mine to be. I just think a crazy tame bird, sometimes you have a little trouble during breeding season, you know, and some people don't. But when I first got them, you know, mine were really tame. And I didn't have the best luck with the real tame ones. Now, maybe it was just a coincidence, but that's always kind of stuck in my head to let them be a little wild. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, you don't want them flying and bouncing off the walls in your pen. And how tame they are is just how much time you spend with them. And I tell everybody, just like teaching a little dog, you know, you go in with their treats, you throw them far away, and you start bringing them closer and closer to you till they're eating out of your hand. Then they're jumping up in your hand, and you just go from there, however tame you want them. Another huge question is the colonies. You know, can you raise them in a colony or raise them in pairs? I've always done mine in pairs. I've tried a couple of colonies. They don't get along too good. I started it out this year with a colony. They were all raised together. I thought it was going to be great, but as soon as the weather warmed up, the hens started fighting a little bit, and you know, the males will fight, but they don't really hurt each other. You know, they'll get up on their tippy toes and start raising Cain and, you know, squaring off, which is pretty fun to watch. They don't really hurt each other, and from what I've seen. Now the hens, they can be brutal. They will kill each other. And probably the last thing is kind of just when you get a bunch of birds and you're trying to sell or market your birds or your eggs, you know, everybody, it seems like most people that call, they say, you know, well, I just want them for pets. I'm not interested in selling eggs or birds. Well, when you're paying that much for those birds, it's nice to be able to get your money back. I mean, those birds run about $400 a pair. The eggs are about 20 bucks. And you'll incur a lot of cost, you know, in setting up your pens and all that stuff. So chances are you're going to want to sell. So eBay is a good way to do it. And you'll see on eBay what a lot of people do. They just put crazy ads on there. I got crazy ads on there myself. They're just trying to draw attention to, you know, to what we have, you know, who we are, how to find us online, websites, Facebook pages, YouTube. Everybody's got a little something different. But the best thing to me, when you do that, you can stick it out there anywhere to try to collect, you know, people following you and all that good stuff. I used to have a page that had 25,000 followers. I shut it down. It just got a little too crazy, and mostly, you know, a lot of people from overseas and just headhunters and all, you know, all the stuff that goes with that. So I cut it off, and I just went on YouTube, and that's all I have now. It's just my YouTube page. And you get calls all the time for eggs and birds, and you know, you get up to around 15, 20 pair. I don't know if you're going to sell everything off of there. You might, but you're talking, you know, you get 20 pair of birds, and you're going to have probably over 1,000 eggs. So you're not going to know what to do with all that stuff. But you will sell it. Just throw your ad out on eBay, start you a little page. And to me, doing videos like this and showing your birds and your pens and your setup is about the best thing you can do. Well, these guys are getting lazy down there. They're not even walking around. But that kind of lets people know that you're not a scam. They, you know, lets them know you have a lot of different varieties and stuff like that. I mean, there are some people out there with pages, and I mean, they're just total scams. A lot of these guys are brokers, which there's nothing wrong with being a broker, but just say you're a broker. But just there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, broker and stuff. I have people that buy eggs from me and broker them, and I mean, I don't have no control over that. You don't know what people are going to do, but I know that I've had eggs bought from me, and they turned right around and sold them for double on eBay. I've seen it many times. The birds, pretty much, it's kind of hard for them to broker birds at $400. I mean, how much can you tack on to that? But some people will buy like a ton of birds at one time. I mean, I do sell birds to brokers, and they get a heck of a discount because they come in and buy most of them. So they either take them overseas, sell them online, or whatever. It's really none of my business what they do with them. So it can be a good little business. Takes a little while to get them going to where you got good bloodlines. That's probably the hardest thing, is keeping up with the bloodlines. But there's a lot of older guys out there that's been doing this for 30 years that still have good contacts with people, that they're able to get good blood. And so that, you know, you just kind of make sure you kind of stay in with some of the people that have been doing it, and just ask them questions. And you know, once they have good blood, they can't really withhold it from you. They're gonna sell all their eggs and all their birds. So it's not like it's just a small club, because if once your bloodlines are all good, it's not like you can hide the good blood from the bad blood. You got to sell what you got. You can't just keep raising them. So it's pretty cool. It's been a great little hobby. We've raised all kinds of birds. You go back and look at our YouTube, you know, you can see all the different ones we've raised and everything. And by far, the Mearns are just some of the coolest. They really are. Calm, and they're worth the most money. So if you're limited on pens, you know, you start out with a few pens and you sell some birds, you can ramp it up, add more pens just as you go. I'd never suggest people call and want like 100 eggs or 50 eggs, and I just feel like that's a gamble with
with no good results in the end, or they'll buy a ton of birds, and if they're new to it and they lose all the birds or none of the eggs work out for them, I mean, they're losing their mind. You know, and I get it. You know, you spend $1,000 on eggs or $2,000 on eggs, and you wind up with 3 or 4 pair, maybe not even that. I mean, you may wind up with a bunch of birds, but it is 100% gamble on stuff like that. So I try to talk people into just starting small, you know, raising a few birds, see how it goes, see if they like it, because you may not even like it. Birds are dirty. Mearns by far are some of the cleanest ones. I mean, you compare a Mearns to a bobwhite, there is no comparison. A bobwhite smells, it's nasty compared to a Mearns quail. Most of them, these are some of the cleanest ones to me. You do pine shavings in here, you can let it go for a long time, and the bigger your pen is, the longer you can let it go without having to do anything. But if you have them in a little tiny 4x4, well, you're going to need to clean it, you know, once a month, if not more. So other than that, I can't really think of anything else. Shipping birds, if I ship them even in state, it's still about 40 bucks plus the box and all the goodies with it. Same way with eggs. If you go out to California, it's about 65, 70 bucks. I've always just done a flat rate on shipping of $50. It doesn't matter. I'm not going back and forth on shipping. Well, you know, it was $60, send me $10, or it was $5 less, send me $5. I'm not doing that. This year, we just want to sell eggs. I really don't want to raise hardly any birds. I've got about 20 pair out here. I still got birds. I mean, it's getting close to them getting ready to lay here pretty soon, and people still haven't picked up their birds. So that's a little crazy to me, but I'll ship them whenever they want them. That's okay. But we're gonna run probably 15 pair, 20 pair this year, and that's it. So probably around 1,000 eggs, I guess I'll have, and I will hatch whatever eggs I don't sell. We've been selling a few on eBay, but I would much rather people just call me, and you know, 1st of May we'll start taking money for eggs. So I'll send out a few of the eBay orders first, probably about mid to the end of May after I check fertility, and I'll start sending those out. Those will all be prepaid, and then just go right down the list. You know, you're on the list after it's paid. Don't get on the list if you're on the fence, because I kind of schedule everything to go down that list so it works out for us. I don't want somebody canceling the week before, and you know, then I got the eggs and I have to hatch them out. It's just a big hassle. So you know, once you're on, you're on. I don't guarantee anything. I don't guarantee shipping. I don't guarantee fertility, hatch. I don't refund any money. I don't do any egg replacement, none of that. I only ship here in the United States, and that's it. And if you want eggs, your best bet is to call me. I know everybody likes to send messages, but I cannot tell you how many people message me. You have no idea who they are. You have no idea where they're from, even if they're from the United States. So if you want to talk about getting some eggs, just call me. I'm easy to talk to. I don't care. You know, it's no big deal to talk. Everyone likes to message. I don't. My job, I'm on that phone, computer all day. I can't stand it. If you want to talk about birds, just call me. It's cool. We can talk about the birds. And then if you want eggs, that's cool. You can pay me through PayPal. I only do friends and family. I don't do it any other way. That's why I hate eBay. I gotta pay eBay so much money for, I mean, it's like 10% on selling eggs, and then you gotta pay PayPal, and then PayPal charges you to even put it in your bank. So it kind of stinks with them. So I think that just about covers it. My phone number is will be up on top, and if you decide you'd like to mess around with some of these, that'd be great. If not, we're going to be doing the mountains again next year in a couple of different varieties. I got rid of a lot of the varieties of birds, and I wish I wouldn't have, because now I kind of miss them. But these are by far the coolest. But that's it. So I'll be pulling these plugs out. If I didn't talk about that, I'm sure I probably did. Those plugs go to the other side. And one of the things about having them in your pen is they need to help them get away from the stress, is they either need a long distance to get away from you, like these guys have got, or if you got the little plugs like that and you can have a separate box, they can run over there to get away from you until they're, you know, nice and tame. But that's it. I'm going to do a bunch of videos during the season this year on eggs and what I have available. You know, each week I'll post the eggs, and I'll do a walk around to all the breeders, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.